So you've probably heard all about the massive exodus from California. It's a huge story, but it brings up a really crucial question, one that a lot of people are asking. Is there anything stopping the state from just taxing you on your way out? We're going to break down exactly what's going on, because the answer is pretty surprising. First, let's just wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this. We're talking about 1.2 million people. That's not a trickle. That is a flood of taxpayers, of talent, of capital, just gone. And you better believe when that much money walks out the door, the state starts looking for ways to get it back. And that brings us right back to the central question here. What is actually stopping California from creating let's call it a departure tax? Well, the simple answer is nothing. In fact, a plan is already in motion, and the way they're doing it is pretty clever. To really understand what's happening now, you have to look at what they tried to do first and how it failed. It all started with a pretty direct attempt in the state legislature. Now, this bill was called Assembly Bill 2088. On the surface, it was pitched as a wealth tax on folks with a net worth over $30 million. But the real kicker, the part you have to pay attention to, was its tail. It was designed to keep taxing you for a full decade after you had already moved out of state. Let's be really clear about what that means. You could sell your house, pack up, move to Nevada or Texas, and for the next 10 years, California could still send you a tax bill. One commentator really hit the nail on the head. They called it a ransom note. You could leave, but you'd still have to pay for your freedom. But here's where it gets interesting. It looked like good news, right? The bill was introduced in 2023, and by January of 2024, it was dead. It failed in committee. A lot of people breathed a sigh of relief, thinking, okay, that idea is finished. But they were wrong. And this is where we see the big tactical shift. The idea didn't die at all, it just changed its strategy. You know, when the front door of the legislature slammed shut, its supporters just went around to the back door, the ballot box. So this is the really crucial part. The method changed. The legislative bill, that failed because it had to go through committees, it had to face scrutiny, but a ballot initiative, that goes straight to the voters, and it's often sold with some very simple, very appealing marketing. So attempt number 1 is over, but attempt number 2 is very much active. And here's the new pitch. It's designed to sound incredibly simple and fair. A one-time 5% tax on billionaires. I mean, who's going to argue with that? It's crafted to be an easy yes vote. But the really critical details, they aren't in the pitch. They're buried in the mechanism. Okay, this slide right here, this is the absolute core of the trap. You have to understand how this works. The initiative says your wealth is assessed as of 2025. So let's say in 2026 you think, all right, I'm out of here, and you move. Guess what? It doesn't matter. It's already too late. They've locked in your assessment from the year before, and that tax bill, it's going to follow you wherever you go. Leaving provides no protection. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This isn't some hidden loophole. They're telling you this is a feature. An economist from UC Berkeley, someone who actually supports this tax, stated it very plainly. This tax is specifically designed to be inescapable. They're telling you straight up, the tax follows your assets. Now, if you're thinking, okay, but I'm not a billionaire, so this has nothing to do with me, but you really need to understand history's playbook, because we have seen this exact strategy used time and time again. The most famous example, of course, is the federal income tax. Back in 1913, it was sold to the public as a tax on only the super rich, just the top 1%. And for a little while, that was true. But look at it today. Nearly every single working person in America pays it. This is the pattern. It starts small and then it expands. And this pattern of expansion isn't a one-off thing. We see it everywhere with all sorts of taxes and mandates. They start small with a reason that sounds justifiable, and then year after year, the scope just grows. So this brings us to the most important part of this whole discussion. This isn't just about billionaires. It's about setting a legal precedent that could, down the line, affect a much, much broader group of people. Look, they almost always start with billionaires. Why? Because it's the path of least resistance. It polls really well, and politically, it's a tough thing to argue against. But it's almost never the endgame. So after that precedent is set, where do you think they look next? Well, history tells us it expands downward. Suddenly, it's not about billionaires' yachts. It's about the wealth you've built up in your own home, your home equity. For millions of middle-class Californians, that's their single biggest asset. And from there, it's a very, very short leap to the money you've spent your whole life saving, your retirement accounts. See, once the government gets the power to tax wealth you haven't even sold yet, and to do it after you leave, well, there's really no logical stopping point, is there? Okay, so the implications here are pretty significant, but the goal isn't to create panic. It's about understanding what's happening so you can prepare yourself. So let's talk about an action plan. Here are 3 simple, measured things to keep in mind. First, know the timeline. This is being aimed at the November 2026 ballot. Second, if you are planning to leave, you have to do it properly. We're not just talking about moving your stuff. We're talking about legally severing all ties to establish residency somewhere else. And third, share this information. A lot of people are only going to see the headline, "Tax the Billionaires," and have no idea about the mechanism they might be voting for. Ultimately, the strategy behind this ballot initiative is really simple. It's counting on voters to react emotionally to the idea of taxing the rich without really digging in and understanding the long-term consequences or the powerful precedent that's being set. So that leaves everyone with a pretty fundamental question. Knowing that this mechanism is on the table, and knowing the historical pattern of how these kinds of taxes tend to expand, what's your plan? Are you staying or are you getting out? This story is far from over. Remember, they failed in the legislature, so now they're trying the ballot box. This is a developing situation, and we're going to keep tracking it. They are not done yet, and understanding what comes next is absolutely critical. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our updates.